What's up, Sauce Nation? It's your boy Hector Flores coming at you with an Astros videos. If you didn't judge by the thumbnail, it's just me today, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about Carlos Correa no longer with the Houston Astros. Obviously, he just signed with the Minnesota Twins. What exactly does that deal mean, and where do the Astros go from here? So that is what I'm going to talk about in this video. If you guys, please make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to Sauce Sports. Click on that notification bell so you'll be notified when we drop videos just like this. And of course, when we do our live streams, especially on Tuesdays at 7 on fox26.com. So make sure you guys do all of that. Also, follow us on social media at Sauce Sports HCX on Instagram and Twitter, and at Sauce Sports on Facebook and TikTok, because, well, TikTok's a thing for Honcho. What is he doing there? I have no fucking idea. You guys can go ahead and figure that out for me. But also, if you guys want a little bit extra sauce in your lives, well, you can join the Discord. How do you join the Discord? You sign up through Patreon. You join the Patreon, you become a member of the Discord, where you'll hear us talk about all things. We'll talk sports for sure at some point, but we also have like very broad discussions of other shit. It's fun. I highly recommend it. Go ahead and check it out. But yeah, so with all that being said, man, go ahead and get going with this video. All right, so Carlos Correa has accepted a 3-year, $105 million deal. Essentially, if you divide that, it's roughly $35 million a season, with 2 option years following this season. Now, I'm going to try to explain. One, congratulations, Correa. He's officially now the highest paid infielder in Major League Baseball, because he passed up Anthony Rendon by $0.1 million. But let me explain the contract before I explain whether or not the Astros went cheap or any of that. The dollar amount isn't what you should be looking at. It is those 2 option years. What does that mean? Carlos Correa can opt out next year or the following year, depending on how his season goes. This is a evil genius Scott Boras type move, and if you guys don't know, Scott Boras is the agent for Carlos Correa. Now, let's say Carlos Correa has a good, like an amazing, almost MVP type season with Minnesota. Let's be realistic. Minnesota last year was last place in the AL Central. While they did end up getting Gio Urshela, that's not necessarily like a huge upgrade. This team has still a lot of things that needs to be addressed before they're contenders, especially in that AL Central, where you still have the White Sox. You know, don't forget about them. Cleveland, you can't sleep on that team. It's still a very open division, but I don't think Minnesota necessarily has the team that can compete with this division just yet, especially because, they lost a lot of guys. Giving up Josh Johnson frees them the money to go ahead and get Correa. Now, this does benefit Minnesota, and you guys might be surprised as to why. Essentially, Correa is a rental. This season, you can view him as a rental player because he's essentially on a 1-year contract. He can choose to opt out in the next 2 years. So let's say Minnesota doesn't have a good year. It's not going to look like they're going to be contenders. And Correa is having a great year. Teams are interested by trade deadline. You essentially have the opportunity to let Correa go and get some assets out of it, specifically prospects. So this is a win-win for Minnesota. I mean, unless Correa opts out. But you bring in a star like Carlos Correa to your team. Even if you don't compete, you're going to have people come watch your games, either to boo him or cheer for him. Depends how they feel. But you essentially got yourself a good player for rental, and you could probably trade him, by trade deadline especially if you don't think that he's going to come back the following season. So Minnesota ain't stupid. They made a good move. Scott Boras, once again, being the evil genius that he does, is able to find a deal that benefits his player, because Correa, the other thing is Correa wants a long-term deal. Right now, teams are very hesitant on giving him that long-term deal because of, well, 1, he had a back operation done recently, and 2, Correa has an injury history. So that's something that's really hard to commit a long-term contract with a player, even as good as Carlos Correa is, because we know how good he can be, but we also know his health issues. So, and then obviously you recently just had a back operation done. So that is a factor as to why some teams probably didn't commit to him. And I'm assuming because teams were not giving him those deals. I don't know. Baltimore was probably just not realistically where Correa wants to go. Minnesota has a better shot at being more competitive than Baltimore because of their division alone. But I think he got a deal that benefits Correa because, once again, if Correa balls out, he does the whole, like I said, have an MVP type season, decides to opt out the following year, he is going to get that 8-year lucrative contract. And right now, he's now the highest paid infielder in baseball. So Scott Boras did a great job. Correa did a great job. Now let's talk about the Astros, because people are probably like, they couldn't match that deal. You want the Astros to give Correa 2 option years. I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. Even as much as I love Carlos Correa, if I'm bringing Correa in, I'm bringing him in for a multi-year deal that's going to make sure he stays at least 5 years. That's what he deserves because of what he's brought to Houston. Don't try to compare this to Watson, because Watson, that's a whole other thing, and I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Correa has a lot more significance to the city of Houston. As much as you guys want to hate, I know some people are mostly Texans fans, probably can care less about baseball, but Correa means more to Houston than Deshaun Watson will even reach to. That's because, one, Correa brought a World Series to this city, and Correa is just an amazing player and is amazing has done a lot of love for the city of Houston. That's where I think Correa definitely stands at. Now, the issue wasn't, the money is definitely an issue because the Astros only had $33 million to spend on their budget, which is $33 million that they also need to go address other needs. The bullpen probably you want to help improve that bullpen. Depending what you want to do with the shortstop middle infield position, that's also something you got to look at. If some people probably don't feel Siri or Myers or McCormick are the guys for center field, or if you move Tucker to center field, well, you got to look for a right fielder. So there's still some things that the Astros could improve on. The Astros still have a pretty solid team, but there's still things that you can improve on this team drastically. The starting rotation, bullpen. So there's other things that if you gave that all to Correa, and obviously you only have $33 million, Correa got $35 million, you're gonna get hit with a luxury tax because of passing up the budget. And look, man, don't trust owners that say they have no problem spending. They are not going to take a luxury tax for players. The Rams kind of just said fucking go full send. The Astros aren't going to be a team that said, especially in baseball, there's just not many teams that are going to be willing to do those full send type moves. So, especially when there's always prospects that are going to come up and you have more control and they're cheaper until, their contract comes up and then you got to pay them. But that's just a factor. So, there is a possibility that Correa can come back to Houston. It just depends how much the Astros are willing to spend that next time around. But there we are with the Correa contract. Like I said, man, it's not about the money. Don't think it's about the money. Don't think it's about the 3 years. Don't think the Astros could have matched that. They probably could have, but in all reality, who would want to give a player 2 back-to-back option years? The only team that would is Minnesota. There's probably other teams that would that also kind of like could benefit from having a guy like Correa, especially in a trade perspective. But once again, I don't think that's a move that the Astros want to do. If they're going to try to get Correa, they want to get him for a long-term deal and keep him here as long as he can. Plus, what also benefits Correa, say if he does stay for the next 3 years, by the time he gets out, he's going to be 29, almost 30. So he's hitting his prime. So, his value is just going to keep increasing, especially if he stays healthy. So, it's a good move for Correa and Scott Boras in Minnesota. They got a pretty good deal from that. Correa still has that chance to get that multi-year deal. The Astros, well, there's things that need to be considered now because you lost your star shortstop. So, we'll go ahead and talk about that next. All right, so the question is, what do the Astros do now, right? What do? They lost their star shortstop, their leader, their captain, their big prime number 1 draft pick. You got nothing for him. He's a free agent, so you literally weren't going to get the other. Oh no, we have another Springer situation. Look, it just happens when you're a small market team. It's just going to happen. You're going to lose stars. Look at Oakland right now, a team that looked like they were poised to be competitive for years, and they just went ahead and sold the farm. So it happens in baseball when teams that just can't afford players They got to make moves like this eventually. It sucks because, obviously what Carlos Correa means to Houston, but that's, well, it's done. He's with Minnesota. He's a Twin now. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see, what exactly, we'll see what happens there with Correa. But what can the Astros do right now? So obviously, the clear obvious choice is, there is a shortstop available in the market, and that is Trevor Story. Trevor Story is another one that's a lot of people looked at it of this free agency class of shortstops. Obviously, Carlos Correa, Francisco Lindor, who ended up getting his deal done before free agency, Javi Baez, of course, Corey Seager, and Trevor Story. Now, why is it that Trevor Story is the last shortstop, at least the big shortstop free agent? Well, I've said it plenty of times, but I'll say it again. It is because of the Coors Field effect. For if you guys don't understand what the Coors Field effect is, well, we're talking about Colorado, right? Denver, Colorado has a higher altitude, means the ball flies in a different way compared to other major league ballparks. So a double in Coors Field could probably be a triple or a home run, or a single could possibly be a double. So that's really what it is, what that Coors Field effect means. So sometimes you gotta take a risk with these Colorado Rocket players, like the St. Louis Cardinals. They recently went and got, they obviously got Nolan Arenado. It worked out for them because, everybody knows that what kind of player Nolan Arenado is. Now, Trevor Story is a really good player. That's the reason why he's one of those top shortstop free agents. But obviously, that is still always going to be a concern, is the Coors Field effect. Now, but at this point, he's the only guy there, and you see a lot of teams fighting for Trevor Story. But that is a possible option, obviously, depending on how much he wants. That's going to be a big factor. He saw how everybody else got for money-wise. So, he's going to want to get a pretty good paycheck. So that is a possible factor, is going after big free agent Trevor Story. The other option is within your organization. Or, before I go within the organization, the other option is probably going after a third baseman. This kind of goes back to something that I've talked about a lot on Sauce, and that is that, remember, Alex Bregman is naturally a shortstop. That's what he played in LSU. He's naturally a shortstop, but plays really good at third base. A lot of people see him as a top 5 third baseman. Now, maybe he can translate that with shortstop. Once again, being that is his natural position. That is an option. But I think maybe a lot of people would prefer him staying at third base because of what he contributes over to that side on the infield. Now, but obviously, if you can go find yourself a free agent third baseman, and you can move Bregman to shortstop, that also eases up some concerns. Now, within your organization, obviously you have Aledmys Diaz, who is our wow, I'm really drawing a blank on that. Well, you have Aledmys Diaz, obviously can play shortstop plus numerous positions. That's a possible option. You know what he provides. He brings a pretty decent bat. He's pretty good defensively, so you know what you're getting from Aledmys Diaz. Or you can go for the more exciting option, and a lot of guys have said really good things about him, and that's Jeremy Pena. Jeremy Pena, obviously, we saw what he's been doing over in the winter leagues. He's been killing it over there. Maybe it's now time to look into the future, and Jeremy Pena is a bright part of that future. Obviously, I gotta mention it at least once for Ray's sake. Pedro Leon is also a guy that can play shortstop. I see him as a center fielder, but obviously he can also play shortstop. That's also an option. But Jeremy Pena, obviously, he's a little bit more. I think everyone's kind of prepared to see him this season. A lot of players have a lot of good things to say about Jeremy Pena. So you can really go down those options. Or, I mean, it's going to suck, but obviously come the trade deadline, maybe make a move for Carlos Correa. And then take in that 3-year with two option contract from Scott Boras. Probably not realistically going to happen because you're going to have to give up a ton of prospects to get Correa. But I think obviously either looking at Trevor Story, which I will say, if you guys want to ask me my tier list of options, number one, I'm just going to say it. I would explore the option of Alex Bregman at shortstop. I would at least test it out, see what Alex Bregman can do at short. I think he would actually do pretty well. But that would also mean I got to go look for a third baseman. So maybe it's not the most ideal as far as spending wise to now, okay, well, we addressed the shortstop position, but now I got to go ahead and address the third baseman. Plus, I only have $33 million to play with, and I still got other needs. So maybe even though I would put that as my number one, it probably wouldn't be realistic for everybody else. Number two is obviously Jeremy Pena. He's cheap. We have a lot of control of him in his contract, and he has a lot of potential. There's going to be some growing pains because there's going to be a transition from AAA, which he hasn't played a full AAA season, to Major League Baseball. So maybe he gets hot just like Correa did when he first got called up, or maybe it takes him some time, kind of like Alex Bregman. It did take Alex Bregman some time before he became the guy that we all know he can be. So there's that growing pain that maybe some people, and then everyone's going to put that pressure that he's Correa's replacement. Honestly, everybody's going to be viewed as Correa's replacement. But I think, Jeremy Pena is a really good option. And then there's Aledmys Diaz, and then at the bottom is Trevor Story. I'm not necessarily as high on Trevor Story as most people are. Once again, the Coors Field effect is one of my biggest concerns about Trevor Story. He could prove me wrong. He is a really good defensive shortstop, but like I said, the Coors Field effect is one of the things that always concerns me about guys from Colorado, and that's why I'm always worried about getting guys from Colorado as well, even pitchers, because it is not a pitcher-friendly ballpark over there. But I think that's a possible option. So once again, my tier list is Alex Bregman. I think switch him over to shortstop. I think he could do you well. Probably not the most ideal for everybody because obviously that means now you got to address the third baseman position. Number two is Jeremy Pena. I think we should see he deserves a shot to see what he can do. I think he's done amazing in the winter leagues. So let's go see what the kid can do. At number three, Aledmys Diaz, and then number four, I would say, once again, maybe go for Trevor Story, depending on what he wants on that deal. So that is basically what the Astros, what's now for the Astros. I'm going to honestly tell you, losing Correa for me is a lot harder than losing Watson. Honestly, I can frankly care less about Watson. He didn't want to be here, so he can leave. Similar, I think Correa maybe wanted to try to come back to Houston because what the city means to him. But baseball is a business, and it's not. Baseball is one of those sports where guys are gonna leave, but there's other options. And obviously, when you have a farm system, it does make things a little, especially when you're considered a small market baseball team, which the Astros are. The Astros are a small market team, and that's how it's just gonna be. That's how they're gonna have to run business right now. And luckily, you have some shortstop prospects that have some good potential in Jeremy Pena. So I think it sucks that we lost Correa, but you just got to move on. Hopefully he opts out next season and the Astros can offer him a better deal. Maybe they have a little bit more budget opened up, depending what happens with that CBA. But I haven't really read the CBA, so I don't know what the budget threshold will be updated to. But that's an option. But maybe they free up some space by next season that they can actually commit to a long-term deal with Carlos Correa. So I don't think it's necessarily over with Correa. Correa is possibly going to be a free agent again next season, which means that he's probably going to make more money if he does opt out of Minnesota. So there is still that possibility. So don't think that it's over for Correa in Houston, or that Houston didn't want Correa. It's just a business, man. Especially, you got to be careful, man. As soon as a player is said that they're going to, join with Scott Boris's agency, that's basically a kiss of death for the team that has that player. Essentially, that's a kiss of death. So there is that. But yeah, man, go into the comments. Tell me what you guys think about Correa no longer with the Houston Astros. How do you feel about the options that the Astros have to move on from Correa, even though you guys probably don't want to move on from Correa? Probably going to hear a lot of things that the Astros are idiots, that James Click sucks, and Jim Crane is James Click is terrible, Jim Crane is cheap, all those. I'm sure we'll see a bunch of those in the comments. But hey, but that's how you feel. That's how you feel, man. So go into the comments. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to South Sports, click on that notification bell, follow us on social media. Make sure you guys join the Discord, sign up through Patreon. You can put you right into the Discord. So with all that being said, man, chuck it up a deuce. Y'all stay saucy.